Hello, my name's Dr. P. Dominique Paterano, PhD, President and founder of Crimson Coaching. This talk is entitled Impact Projects, How to Stand Out During the College Admissions Process. So just a little introduction about to me and who I am. I am a former high school teacher who started Crimson Coaching to provide academic tutoring, test prep, and college counseling to students worldwide in 2014. A lot of times people ask me, why did you name your company Crimson Coaching? And as you can see from the diploma and photograph mats behind me, that is crimson, that sort of deep red color, which is the color of my alma mater, Harvard. And so what I do is coach students to reach their academic potential. So Crimson Coaching. I developed this talk because many of you know, if you're watching right now, that college admissions has been growing more and more competitive each year. And one way that students can really stand out is by developing what I call an impact project. But a lot of times people have no idea what that means. So I'd like to share with you what an impact project is, some examples of projects that I've mentored, and how that can be utilized during the college admissions process to help a candidate stand out. Well, before we get to that, I would just like to thank you for watching and to thank the library for inviting me to deliver this pre-recorded webinar for you. So as a historian, the doctor in Dr. P is a doctorate in history. I do just like to share with my audiences where I get my sources from. So some of them are personal. This is where I lived when I was at Harvard. It's called Dunster House and is marked by that crimson dome, onion-shaped dome that you see up top. When I attended the 25th reunion of my graduation from Harvard, I did attend a talk with the former undergraduate director of admissions there, William Fitzsimmons. And so I'm passing some of the tips he gave to us as parents on to you. Also, my professional life has been spent around teenagers. I started in my 20s as a high school teacher at Great Neck North High School in Nassau County, and I ended it at Scarsdale High School in Westchester County. And in between, I spent 5 years at the independent day school, Horace Mann School in Riverdale, New York. But the bulk of my sources for this talk really come from my professional experience mentoring people, students who will be applying to college through Crimson Coaching. I've helped students get accepted to Princeton University, Stanford University, as well as other more modest universities where essays that they've written under my guidance have gotten them $60,000 a year scholarships to college. In addition, I also try to stay abreast of the recent research in this field of college admissions. And to that end, I'd really like to recommend highly that if you or someone you love is applying to college within the next 2 to 5 years, I would certainly read Who Gets In and Why? A Year Inside College Admissions by Jeffrey Salingo, as well as The Price You Pay for College by his New York Times journalist colleague, Ron Lieber. So let's just talk a little bit about what is an impact project, because you may be unfamiliar perhaps with that term. So I define an impact project as an extracurricular activity that demonstrates a student's ability to be self-directed and take initiative, so-called entrepreneurial, but not necessarily in starting a business, but just taking the initiative. Most importantly, an impact project should emerge from a student's authentic passions. So don't do something that you think your neighbor is doing to try to be impressive. Do what interests you. They are often long-term and last for more than one school year. And they are conducted independently outside of a school's organized extracurricular activities, but not necessarily alone. And sometimes when an impact project involves research, as we'll talk about in the second half of this presentation today, it may start as a research project in school, but much of the work for that project is being conducted outside of school. Overall, the impact project should be a place where a student can really showcase and highlight their problem-solving abilities, their creative thinking, as well as their maturity and readiness for college. So a lot of you may be thinking that, well, this sounds an awful lot like community service. I would say, though, that there are pretty significant differences between your standard community service activities and impact projects. Community service activities are usually organized and led by others, usually adults, such as at the school or a religious or civic organization. Whereas an impact project really originates from and are led by the student, him or herself. A community service activity, that work will continue long after the student leaves, and whether or not the student at hand remains involved, whereas an impact project would cease to exist without that student's input and direction. But nevertheless, impact projects do and can serve a community's need, as we're going to see by the examples that I'll be sharing with you in a moment. Let's just look for a moment at what an admissions officer from Boston College has to say about the impact of projects on admissions. Grant Gosselin has written, "Students should spend their high school years participating in organizations and activities that bring them joy. It always saddens me when a student or parent asks which clubs or organizations they should join to increase their chances of admissions to college. Living one's life simply to please others is never a good strategy for happiness and personal fulfillment. By exploring genuine, authentic interests as you move through high school, you'll learn a lot about yourself and will be best able to showcase your talents to colleges when the time comes." So Mr. Gosselin is really speaking there about traditional extracurricular activities, but I believe his advice applies especially to impact projects, which will really be not being directed by an adult, but are really going to be directed by the student themselves. So the first student of mine, and full disclosure, this student was not an impact project mentee. He happened to be an SAT student that I tutored. Nevertheless, I heard about his good work in the year after we worked together on the SAT. And so I thought this was a great impact project. He didn't even need a mentor for it because he was so entrepreneurial. So this is actually a clip from ABC News, which I'll play right now. I hope to play right now. Oops, why isn't that playing? Let's see. It played when I did this before. Perhaps because I'm in sharing mode, it's not. Okay, well, I will just tell you about it then. You can, I'm sure, look this up. Google Arjun Dial, ABC News, coronavirus, masks, and basically Arjun noted that there was a need in his community in the very early days of the pandemic. Arjun's from Greenwich, Connecticut. And he lived relatively close to White Plains Hospital in Westchester, New York. And he noted, like many hospital workers around the country. They lacked PPE, personal protective devices, and Arjun happened to have a 3D printer at home. And so he 3D printed face shields for hospital workers and delivered them to the hospital workers. Now, clearly, not everybody owns a 3D printer, but you don't need to. Let's look at some of the other ways that students have done impact projects on a lot more with a lot more modest budget. So Sadie, who I happened to help last year with her college essay, talked to me about her, and she wrote a college essay about a supplemental essay about her work during the pandemic on TikTok, where she began to post review videos for AP US history, and then that led to physics and pre-calculus. And she at first, was doing this just out of the goodness of her heart. But interestingly enough, I happen to note here that it was $5 to join these groups. And, if you look at how many followers Sadie had, if you multiply 18,000 by $5, you'll see that Sadie may have been able to pay for a couple of years of college with the revenue that she generated there. Now, you don't need to charge for it, but this was an example of Sadie could write about her bringing together students from all over the world through her ability to use social media at a time, COVID lockdowns, when students really needed her help. I helped Ward during his very initial stages of planning an outdoor fitness station behind Scarsdale High School while Ward was still a sophomore in high school and preparing for his Eagle Scout project. And the reason why this was such a great impact project is because Ward had to do many things. He had to raise money for the equipment. He had to get permission from the town to devote that land for this outdoor fitness station. And he had to also get his fellow Eagle Scouts on board to help him install it. And so the ability to execute a project like this really demonstrates enormous skills of organization, the ability to interact and follow up with adults who are often busy and don't, follow up with emails or return your calls, the ability to ask people for money. So many amazing talents can get developed from this impact project, aside from the fact that he did something really good for his community. That P.S. This happened to be built just 4 months before the COVID pandemic broke out. I bet that this outdoor fitness station got a lot of use during that time because of its being outdoors. So what do these 3 examples have in common? Well, first of all, they grew out of students' authentic passions. You know, Arjun's really into technology. He had been coding and teaching kids how to code in India, and that's why he had a 3D printer. Ward was very much into fitness. Sadie was really into history. So they took what they were passionate about, and then they met a need in their community, whether that community was physical, right around them, or virtual, like Sadie did using the web. Most importantly, they did not allow COVID to stymie their vision. In fact, they took advantage of the needs that COVID highlighted in order to meet the needs of their community. So, I will just say now, it's 2022, the COVID pandemic appears to be abating. And, students might say, they still might say, however, that there are other challenges. But I will say that COVID's challenges were pretty significant. So if those students, as well as another one who I'm going to tell you about, could overcome the challenges of COVID with ingenuity, you could probably overcome the challenge that you may face. So if you're not sure about how to find an idea for your impact project, you really want to ask yourself, well, what are my interests? And what does my community need? You really don't have to go very far. I even was hiking recently in Huntington, and I noticed that a young lady had created an app which was a trail map for the place that I was hiking, and you could scan this little barcode, this QR code, and it brought up the map on your phone. I mean, something as simple as that. Simple, I don't know how to do that, but obviously she knew how to build an app and her community needed that. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things that you could respond to in your community. If you still can't think of anything, check out United Nations list of 17 sustainable development goals and pick one of them that really speaks to you. You also might want to poll and enlist your friends. See what they think needs to be done around your community. And so just remember that I'm not saying that impact projects aren't community driven. In fact, I'm saying sometimes the best impact projects are community service, but they are just not being led by adults or other people. They're being led by students. So another type of impact project is original research. But let's be clear, this is not some sort of 4-page paper that gets assigned as a part of a class. It could be any academic subject as long as the research and the writing is conducted mostly independently, and it should really demonstrate a student's intellectual curiosity, persistence, because original research often requires a lot of dead ends, as I can tell you from writing my 350-page dissertation, and the ability to think and work with originality. Now, I say it's conducted mostly independently, but of course, I myself mentor students, and you can always find a mentor. Perhaps one of your teachers can mentor it, or a local graduate student or professor might even mentor you. And in fact, such original research may facilitate your ability to conduct research as an undergraduate, and therefore really is a great way to showcase your intellectual passion on your college application. So speaking of that application, there's several different places where you can highlight the impact project on the Common App and other application portals. First of all, your main essay. That is a great place to talk about, I believe it's question number 6 is about an intellectual passion. Question number 2 about overcoming a challenge. If you did overcome a lot of challenges in your project, that could be a place. If you have another topic for your main essay, certainly a supplemental essay can describe your impact project or research. If you're lucky enough to get an interview with the school of your choice, you can definitely and should definitely talk about your impact project or research paper there. You want to talk about it on your activities list or resume. And if you have a mentor, someone like me, you can also get that person to write one of your optional letters of recommendation. If, however, it was a teacher in school, even better, you can use that academic letter of recommendation to talk about that. So I've been mentioning this young lady whose project I mentored, and with research. This young lady went to Mamaroneck High School, an excellent high school in Westchester County, and she wants to study psychology, which she's now doing at UCLA. And she started a group which tutored her friends who were high school students, tutored younger students at a local housing project near her. And she gave the younger students a questionnaire that she developed in conjunction with me that assessed the younger students' self-esteem and optimism prior to getting regular tutoring from the older student. And then she assessed their self-esteem and optimism after getting tutored to see whether this sustained relationship with an older student would have a positive impact on younger students' self-esteem and optimism. The skills that this young lady developed during this project were she had to coordinate events like the weekly tutoring with other teens and adults, including the high school principal and the housing project director. She also had to learn how to write a psychology research paper, which I helped her with, and had to look up the literature review articles, had to write a methodology section, and then she had to learn how to conduct research. She had to formulate a hypothesis and then test it. Most importantly, this poor student was really doing this project at what I would call the height of COVID. She really started in the spring of 2020 and continued it through 2021 until she graduated in June of 21. And she really had to learn how to pivot when she was presented with the real world difficulties that COVID presented. All of which, by the way, she wrote in her application for UCLA, and obviously it was successful. That was her first choice school, and she got accepted. When I was a teacher at Horace Mann School, I also mentored many students' research papers as part of the AP US History class that I taught there for 5 years. This happens to be one very small class that I took to the New York Public Library's main branch on 42nd Street and 5th Avenue. And we would do research there. So I taught them how that is the research branch of the New York Public Library, and that is where I taught them how to do that research. So the student just to the right of the student giving the thumbs up, he actually got his paper that he wrote in my class published in the Concord Review, which is a journal geared to showcase high school students' research in history. And in fact, 2 other students, not in this class, but 2 other students elsewhere, also got papers published in that review. That is a huge feather in your cap that you can put on your college application. Devin is one such student whose paper on the transition from midwifery in the United States to obstetrics, being a female-dominated to a male-dominated field, her paper got published in the Concord Review as well. And in fact, Devin wound up inviting me to her college ceremony, not graduation per se, but just before, because Devin wound up graduating in the top 1% of her class at Cornell University. And as such, as a Merrill Scholar, she was allowed to invite the teacher that had the most impact on her. And she did invite me to that ceremony where she and I met with the president of Cornell at that time, right there. So this is just a little taste of what impact projects are and how they can help you to stand out during the college admissions process. If you'd like to learn more about my work, I encourage you to sign up for my monthly newsletter at crimsoncoaching.com. Up at the top of the homepage, you'll see a black banner that says sign up for our monthly newsletter. So definitely do that. I really do only send that newsletter just once per month. I don't share your email with anybody. And in the newsletter, I always have a very short article on some aspect of adolescent education or the college planning process. And then way down at the bottom, I have a list of the talks that I give that month. The talks themselves are always free. You can also email me at info@crimsoncoaching.com to receive a virtual handout in PDF style, Dr. P's tips on impact projects. And you can watch previous webinars like this on college tours, how to write a great college application essay, how to plan from 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th for college. If you go to youtube.com/c/Crimson Coaching. And if you go there, please subscribe. When you hit that big red subscribe button, it does help my itty bitty baby channel to grow. And of course, if you have any questions at all about impact projects or any of the academic tutoring, test prep, or college counseling, such as college essay coaching that I regularly do with high school students, I encourage you to email me at info@crimsoncoaching.com or check out my website, www.crimsoncoaching.com. I've got a resource page which has a load of free resources, as well as a blog that has, at any given time, 30 articles on topics like the SAT, the ACT, college essays, and more. So thank you so much for listening. And once again, thank you to the library for sponsoring tonight's talk. Have a great night.